and welcome to Eagle Hour with me, Jamie. Today we are diving into the life and latest work of one of the most exciting filmmakers of our time. He doesn't just observe nature, but immerses himself in it completely. From icy Antarctic landscapes to dense African jungles, he has climbed, crawled and camped his way into some of the most remote environments on Earth, all to bring us closer to the animals we rarely get to see. Bertie has won many awards for his work, including 2 Daytime Emmys for cinematography, a BAFTA Television Craft Award for photography, the Youth Outdoor Photographer of the Year in 2012, and was recently awarded the 2025 Rolex National Geographic Explorer of the Year for his work on penguin conservation and storytelling. Hello Bertie, how are you?
Hello, I'm good, thanks. Nice to speak with you.
It's good to speak with you too, and I'm really excited to talk to you about your most recent release, Secrets of the Bees.
Well, I can see you're particularly excited by the cuddly toys that you have surrounding your head.
Yeah, there are quite a few in here.
I feel like I'm missing out. I should have brought some more animals.
Don't worry about it. I think we're a bit beed out over here. But I must say, how are you? Because when you were filming, I think you said at the premiere that you had a bee sting, so how are you after that?
I'm good, yeah. The filming was a little while ago. I've successfully recovered from the bee sting.
That's good.
Bees have a bad reputation for being very stingy, but they really don't want to sting you. But when you spend a lot of time around them, occasionally, some I guess not stars align. That implies it's a good thing. It's the opposite of stars aligning, and you get unlucky and you get stung. And my face blew up big, and I couldn't see out of this eye for a few days. Which,
that's not good.
it wasn't great. Ironic that it's probably unfortunately one of the worst injuries I've had as a result of an animal. Probably the worst. It's ironic given how teeny tiny they are.
Yeah, it is. Well, I'm sort of used to allergies because Dad's pretty much allergic to everything, so don't... Yeah, so yeah. But how long did the filming actually take for that?
So the project was filmed over 3 years. I was involved for a shorter period of that time. But yeah, it was a huge period of time. One, because... we wanted the spine of the 2 episodes is following this sort of hero honeybee hive, so we wanted to follow that. The story follows it for a whole year, but the reality was we wanted multiple kind of goes at each life stage, and of course we also honeybees, which people are very familiar with. The European honeybee is one species, but there are of course nearly 300 species here in the UK, 20,000 species of bee around the world, so we had a lot of bees to get to. So there was some international travel involved as well.
Yeah, you definitely can't do all of the bees, but what filming pieces did you actually do in it?
So my bits, I followed the honeybee hive. I should say that the majority of that sequence was filmed by the legend that is Alistair McEwen, who sadly passed away recently. Who a huge loss for our industry. But yeah, he's sort of a legend, and I think viewers will be blown away by what he filmed. So I kind of complemented that with a few sequences. And then the other sequence that I filmed that I really, really loved was following the wool carder bee.
Cool.
They really like lamb's ears plants, which are those plants with really soft, sort of grey, hairy leaves. They're so nice to touch. My mum is a big gardener, and she always had lamb's ears plants when we were growing up. So I was very familiar with them, but we filmed them of all places. We filmed a lamb's ear plant that was in a wildflower meadow on top of a building right in central London. We were right next to St Paul's Cathedral, near Bank Tube Station. And it turns out that wool carder bees, the males, will set up their territories on lamb's ear plants, and they do that because the female, not only does both the male and female like the pollen that plant makes, but the female needs the very fine hairs that make the leaves very soft. She makes her nest out of those hairs. So the male defends one of those plants and waits basically for a female to come in, and then he can then mate with her. But why they're amazing is that the males are really sassy, and any flying insect that comes on anywhere near their lambsia plant, their prize lambsia plant, they fly at a high speed, and he gives them a good headbutt.
Oh
And
man.
so he chases literally everything. So that was a really fun sequence to film. And the thing that I loved about it was, I mean, the plant was like, this big, like a foot across max.
Oh, okay.
And I spent entire days sat staring at this one little plant, and
Yeah.
and the amount of drama and jeopardy that I saw in that one
Wow.
little area, it makes you realize that actually there's all these dramas in nature. Yes, polar bears and wolves and foxes and badgers are very exciting, big, charismatic animals, but I think we often overlook the small stuff that is just as exciting.
Definitely. And I'd say when we let our garden go wild a couple of years ago, we also saw a lot of things blooming as well, especially the bees too. And I actually, going into the city is quite good, because I was about to ask you, do you do any other filming in the city with the bees, or was it just the Wilcardas?
So the other thing that we followed was, so about 10, 15 years ago, there was a big push to save the bees.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, some of that was a little, I'm not sure I go as far as misguided, but they needed some more information kind of transmitted that got
Yeah.
lost.
Okay.
And so a lot of people went out and they bought beehives, which had honeybees in. And so in central London, if you stand on top of any of the tall buildings with a pair of binoculars and just look at all of the buildings, so many
Yeah.
of them have a bunch of honeybee hives on top. And you would
Oh
think, well,
wow.
we know bees are in trouble, so save the bees. Let's get loads of bees. That's a good thing, right? But actually, what's happened is that London has one of the highest density of honeybees in the world, like anywhere in the world. And there's not a huge amount of food for bees in cities because there's not
Yeah.
many wildflowers. But you've got all of these honeybees. So, as I mentioned, we've got 270 species here in the UK. That's a lot of bees that aren't honeybees. Honeybees are very aggressive, and they're very good at finding food patches because they work as a
Yeah.
team. They're very good at just clearing out food patches. And
Yeah.
so actually having all these hives was a bit like, I'm trying to think of it like a good comparison. It's a bit like us recognizing that wild birds are in trouble. So to save them, we all go out and buy a load of chickens.
Yeah. Okay.
Like that
I
obviously
see.
doesn't make sense when you frame it like that, and that's what's happened with bees. So, and slowly things in London are changing, and people are realizing if you want to help bees, don't get a beehive, don't do that. Just plant more wildflowers. And the amazing thing about that is, who doesn't love flowers? They look
Yeah.
amazing, and so quickly. The phrase "build it and they will come" it applies to the bees. If you grow wildflowers, you will see the positive effect that you have. And what's more inspiring than that? Saving the natural world, but actually getting to see the change that you've made and
Definitely.
enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say with bugs, you definitely get that, because you get to also interact with them and sometimes even handle them. I mean, around the garden or wherever we go, I rescue bees if I see them in trouble. And actually, when we were in Cardiff at one time, we found a city of, I think they were social mason bees, and I think I know why they're called social mason bees now, because there were like thousands everywhere, and some were on the floor, so I picked them up and they went straight on the dandelions and everything. It was just amazing. And I think there was another one called like a Davies mason bee or something along those lines.
Well, we feature another one of the mason bees in the series, and I think it's
Yeah.
one of the standout sequences. And this mason bee is also known as the Harry Potter bee.
That one, yeah.
Because the females lay an egg in a snail shell. They plug up the entrance with a bunch of mud, and then they cover the shell with loads of sticks. But they've got to get the sticks there, so they pick up these sticks that are many times bigger than themselves and fly around riding them like a broomstick. It's absolutely hilarious to watch.
Yeah, when we saw the premiere of that, it was really funny. That had to be one of my favourite bits, just seeing a bee with a massive piece of grass. I mean, I've seen sparrows with long pieces of grass, but a bee, that's a bit crazy.
I mean, I haven't done the body size comparison, but it's like us not carrying a stick. It's like us, carrying almost most of a tree.
Yeah, it's like dragging a tree. But
totally.
having to
And it's not
fly
just dragging
with
it, it's flying around. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's definitely crazy. And how hard was it to actually film the bee flying with a piece of grass?
So for this particular series, I didn't film that sequence, but I have actually filmed that particular bee in that field that we filmed them before.
Oh,
I
wow.
filmed them for a BBC series called Wild Isles,
Oh, yes.
which was narrated by the legend that is Sir David, and actually what's really cool about them, filming insects in flight is next to impossible. You really need like a magnet that keeps bringing them back. And so in the case of the mason bee, you've got the snail shell, which when the bee leaves, it's going to come back to that exact place with a stick. So you almost
Yeah.
have little highways that you can set up on. And I was always filming them. I myself was in a static position. But
Okay.
what we really wanted to do for Secrets of the Bees was take that to another level and kind of be on the adventure with the animal.
Oh,
Anytime you
cool.
can get the camera to track alongside the animal, it's really cool. But like tracking alongside a bee, how on earth do you do that? Well, the cinematographer had developed this ingenious strategy whereby the camera he could hold in his hands, and then he used a really long probe lens, which is like a 2 foot long wide angle macro lens. And then on the end of it, he had a little diopter, a little kind of prism. So it worked almost like a submarine's periscope.
I
So it
see,
meant
yeah.
that he could be standing upright and able to literally run to keep up with the bees. And then the camera would point down at an angle and then would flatten out so that, relative to the bee, it was at eye level. And it meant that as the bee whizzed around with these sticks, he could run around the field like a madman, be alongside the bee and track alongside it. So I mean, the shots are
Yeah.
mind-boggling. Yeah, I was very jealous when I saw that. I was like, wow, I wish I'd thought of that.
Yeah, I think it would be a bit weird if you saw someone running around with a camera just round a field and you can't actually see the bee, so you don't know what he's doing.
Totally. And what's amazing is when you go to that place, it's a very sort of uninspiring sheep field.
Okay, yeah.
The grass is really short. There's little daisies, but it's not a spectacular wildflower meadow like we filmed a lot of this series in. And so you're like, why am I here? And then slowly you get your eye in and you suddenly realize there are these little mason bees building their nests everywhere. It's really magical.
Oh, that is cute. And do you have a bee box in your garden or anywhere that you look to see any bees?
I have not. So I have just planted a bunch of wildflowers because practice what you preach, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, my next step is to get a little bee hotel set up. And yeah, I'm excited to see who takes up residence. I'm really hoping I get a leaf cutter bee because I've never seen one and they're very cool.
Leaf cutters are amazing, and we actually made a homemade bee box that we put up in our garden that was inspired by Professor Dave Goulson, and it was supposed to be for the hairy-footed flower bees because we made the box, we put the clay in the holes, but they didn't come, so we had the red masons.
They didn't get the message.
No, but we've got their flowers this year, so we're hoping that they will come this year. But the red masons definitely did, so they were coming. Actually, a couple have hatched out of their holes now. It was amazing. And then we decided to put bamboo on either side, and the leaf cutters did come. It was amazing, awesome. Because they're one of my favourite species of British bees. I love all species, but the leaf cutters have to be up there because they can just cut the leaves. And yeah, I got a picture of one that won the 11 under category in the BWPA a couple of weeks back now. Yeah, and it was from that bee box in the garden of a leaf cutter just staring at us. And one then I saved from a bucket of water, gave it some honey, and it lapped it up and then made a home. And
well, it just goes to show, if you want to take amazing wildlife photos like you have, you don't have to go halfway around the world to go see a lion. Do it in your back garden. And actually, what's cool about doing it, focusing on the wildlife around where you live, is that you can spend so much time in that place, which is the key, as you know, to photographing and filming wildlife. So you will know that place better you will know your local patch better than anyone else on earth. And if you are fortunate enough to go see a lion, actually taking a unique picture of a lion, very, very challenging, because they've been photographed so much before, and your time is limited. Whereas your local patch, there's all kinds of hidden wonders waiting to be photographed, like you have done. And then you went and cleaned up at BWPA and Wildlife Photographer of the Year. You're getting greedy with all your competition wins.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely cherry on top of an image that was taken from my garden, or I have a great memory of get something in a competition. Even if it's a small competition, it is definitely cherry on top. So it was really special to bring awareness to the little leaf cutters that we actually did have in the garden, and we did not expect them to be here.
Amazing.
Definitely. And you've been saying all the facts, and I've been saying a lot of facts about the bees, but do you have a favourite fact that you've learned about doing secrets of the bees?
Oh, favourite fact. I would say, I think that, I mentioned earlier that there's 20,000 species of bee. I mean, that's pretty mind-boggling. Well, actually, no. I think my favourite fact is that bees are responsible for about a third of the food we eat.
Yes.
And I think they're a perfect example of how the natural world provides so many things that we often take for granted. The air we breathe, productive soils, fresh air, clean water, and all of our food from nature. But a third of that, bees are responsible in the pollination process. And so when we talk about saving the bees, that's not just because it's the right thing to do and it makes us feel warm and fuzzy or warm and buzzy inside. See what I did there? Shameful. But they are critical to our survival, and that's not dramatic to say. You go to places where bees have been completely wiped out, and the amount of money and effort that has to be spent and exerted to artificially pollinate plants is just ludicrous. It's another great example. Save the bees. It's another great example of looking after nature. Yes, we look after nature by doing that, but we're also looking after ourselves.
Yes, definitely, and especially with the bumblebees, they pollinate most of our tomatoes and blueberries and just things that we just see every day on the shelves in a supermarket, and we don't actually think of the bees that were pollinating them.
Tasty tomatoes and blueberries. What would we do without the humble bumblebee?
I don't know. Bumblebees are very cute as well, so it would be hard not to see a bumble flying around, as the queens in our garden are starting to wake up, so they're buzzing too.
Amazing. Actually, when I was filming that wool bee in London, there were a lot of bumblebees around, and there was actually a big foxglove next to the Lamsius plant that the bumblebees really like to go to, and occasionally they'd sort of stray onto the flowers of the Lamsia, and the little woolcarder was like, you might be like 3 times bigger than me, but I'm still going to headbutt you in midair.
Man.
So it was really hard to photograph those because it didn't happen nearly as often as the honeybees, which were everywhere coming into the woolcarder's territory. But I did get one shot that's in the show of a bumblebee like flying towards camera with the woolcarder like right behind it. It's sort of the world's smallest sort of fighter jet dog fight. It was really cool. Bee fight.
Wow, that is amazing. Yeah, definitely to be chasing something that's bigger than you. Is that a bit like the vulture bees when they're trying to fight everything off their patch of meat?
Totally, yeah. I mean, sassy, aggressive little bees, and they are really teeny tiny vulture bees, but they definitely pack a punch. And of course, I mean, that's another on the topic of good sort of bee pub facts. The vulture bee is capable of turning rotting flesh into honey, which is absolutely mind-boggling adaptation to the fact that the Amazon, compared to a wildflower meadow, has a surprisingly few amount of flowers that the bees can get pollen and nectar from. So they've used some imagination and creativity to make their honey from rotting flesh instead.
Definitely. I wonder what bee came up with that and go, you know what, everyone, we're going to make something out of meat.
I've got an idea.
Yeah. Have you ever tried that, honey?
No, I haven't. I asked so John Brown was a camera person that went out and filmed that, and I asked him about that. and he said he hadn't tried it, but apparently it's sweet and tasty. And I mean, there's a crazy process that the bees are going through, and allegedly it doesn't actually make you sick. But
Wow.
honey, has incredible antibacterial qualities, because of course the bees are using it, are storing the honey as the honey they're making is not for us. It is a food reserve that they're making for when the winter months when there aren't flowers out. So it needs to last a long time. So yeah, they pump it full of a bunch of things that mean that it's sort of preservatives, I guess, natural preservatives. As part of that, I think that stops bacteria growing. So yeah, I think the fact that it's in the case of the vulture bee made from rotting flesh is sort of fine.
Yeah. It is a little crazy, but did you manage to see any other species of insects when you were filming apart from bees?
Other species of insects. I mean, all sorts. You sit in a wildflower meadow and it's just packed full of all sorts. I mean, the wildflower meadow that our like hero hive was next to in Dorset was really extraordinary spot. I mean, countless species of butterfly for one. Buzzing around, and I think that's the really cool thing about insects is, you sort of just pause for a moment. Our lives are so like on the move and you sort of sensory overload. You pause and sit down, and suddenly you realize there's this whole world that you're walking past and missing. So I'd really encourage your listeners that next time you're near a wildflower meadow, just this spring and summer, just sit down next to it and watch. And I think we are told that our attention spans are like decreasing because of phones and social media and all that stuff. I'm not necessarily convinced that's entirely true, or at least I've been told, oh, that means we need to make programs that sort of are grabbing your attention the whole time. I think if the story is good, then you can hold someone's attention even now. But what I would say, where I was going with that, was with the wildflower meadows. If you just sit down and watch, I mean, you can be the most ADHD person because there is like a new stimulus coming from all directions all the time. There's so much to look at.
Oh, definitely. There's some trees near us, and when they blossom, you can hear the bees, definitely. Just that buzzing. You can see the bumblebees, the honeybees, some of the solitary species. It is amazing. And I remember that one bit when you were filming the bees pollinating, you had the crab spiders. Did you see many of those when you were filming them?
Yeah. I mean, there's a surprising amount of them, and fortunately, those crab spiders are pretty rubbish at catching bees. I mean, what I don't know is, given that they're so small and that a honeybee's pretty big, I don't know actually how often they need to catch one, and it might be that they weren't kind of going for them or kind of doing it half-heartedly because they don't need to be successful very often. But yeah, no, there were lots of those.
Yeah, we have a lot of them in our garden as well. And recently I realised that actually we have more crab spiders than flower crab spiders, and there's actually about 3 different species of those that can be found in the UK.
Well, that's the amazing world of insects is that, and it's sort of daunting at the same time, that just the sheer diversity of life is truly mind-boggling.
There are so many species that are still yet to discover. And how many species of solitary bees do you think you managed to film in Secrets of the Bees?
Well, that's a good question. I think we filmed 9 species for the series.
Okay.
But yeah, some of those weren't solitary. So we did film the European honeybee, the Asian honeybee. The vulture bees also are not solitary. Couldn't tell you. I think it was about half solitary versus social.
Yeah, because I do know that I think there's about over 200 to 200 different species of solitary bee found in the UK. So yeah, there's a decent amount of them here, and I don't know the figures of solitary bees in the world, but
a lot. I mean, most are, and I think again, it comes back to the challenge of trying to shove the entire 20,000 species into two 45-minute episodes. We definitely went for quality rather than quantity. But yeah, there's a nice variety of some of the most exciting social and some of the most endearing solitary.
And I know that, I think it was about a couple of years ago when you were filming one of the episodes for Animals Up Close, that you were filming lions, and it was a hot day and there were bees all over your water bottle trying to get the water. Did you know that a couple of years later you'd actually be filming those bees?
Yeah, well, I'm glad we didn't film those particular bees because I'm pretty sure those were African killer bees.
Oh, are they African killers?
I think so. So we didn't try and film those. But yeah, that was pretty funny. I also didn't realise then, sort of, I wouldn't go as far as saying I guess I am semi-allergic to bees I discovered on this project. And I've had some serious run-ins with bees in the past. I was in the Colombian Amazon. And I don't know if you're familiar with the word tepui. So that is these big cones of rock that rise up out of lowland Amazonian jungle. They're these huge kind of spires of rock with flat tops. Tepui, great word. And you get them in the Venezuelan Amazon. You get them in the Colombian Amazon. There's some in Brazil as well.
Right.
And we had landed on the top of one of these tepuis in a helicopter. And what's amazing is that these tepuis, the tops of them are islands, effectively islands in the sky. So you have amazing species endemism, so species that are only found on that one tepui, because it's basically like an island, because a lot of the animals, that can't fly, don't have the ability to move off that one tabletop. And we landed, we got dropped off, and what we didn't realize until the helicopter took off and left us for a few days was that the downdraft of the rotors had basically disturbed a ground hive of bees. They were unsurprisingly very grumpy with us. And I must have got stung 50 times, as did the rest of the crew. It was pretty scary, actually. And I do wonder, because I wasn't allergic then, whether that now has kind of predisposed me to being a bit more sensitive.
Maybe.
And that's why, my face blew up. Or maybe just when you get stung by a bee, the amount of venom it injects sort of varies hugely based on where you get stung, how quickly you manage to flick it off. And I think that one that got me just above my eye just got a real big dose in there. My whole face ballooned up.
I just checked the time, and I know that you're quite tight for time. I'm quite tight for time. So I'm going to ask you the special Eagle Hour question, which is, if you had £500 million, what would you do with it?
£500 million? That's a great question. What would I do? Well, I think there are so many places around the world with a little bit of philanthropy, a little bit of a kick, they can be dramatically changed. And I'm fortunate enough to not have £500 million. I'm fortunate enough to know some people that do, and I'm constantly, convincing them to spend more and more money on help restoring the natural world. And the really exciting thing is that, if you give nature the chance, it can bounce back. It will bounce back on an unbelievable scale. And so, yes, we humans have done a lot of damage to the world, and we continue to. If we give it the chance, and philanthropy is a huge part of that, then wildlife really can come back on a crazy scale, and that's good for wildlife, good for people. Yeah, it's win-win.
Definitely, especially with places like marine protected areas and things, you can really see it come back.
Totally, yeah. I mean, marine systems bounce back super fast, and a great example of them helping. But them helping both the wildlife come back, but people, because marine wildlife, all wildlife doesn't recognize our boundaries. They're just marks on a piece of paper, and so they overspill outside, and that means that fishermen that might not be able to fish inside the no-take zone of marine protected areas, they benefit from the overspill. So again, great example of animals winning, wildlife winning, and humans winning too.
Oh, definitely. Now, before I end this amazing podcast, I do have a couple of riddles for you to try and answer.
Okay, no pressure.
Well, there's an easy one and a hard one.
Do I get clues?
You can, if you're struggling, yeah.
Okay, I'll take phone a friend, yeah.
Okay, so do you want an easy one or the hard one first?
Definitely the easy one.
Okay. All right, I was trying to remember them before this podcast, but guess what? I've forgotten them. So I'm going to have to look at my little notebook that I scribbled them all down in. And I've written 2 riddles for you, so this is the easy one. On the African savannah, roaming around, a creature stalks without any sound. In the small family, instead of big, it could easily overtake a running pig. What am I?
Stalking around. Oh, is that a play on words? As in, we're talking the bird stalk, or we're talking stealthy stalk?
It's a mammal.
Okay.
It's a mammal. So yeah, stalk is in sort of like hunting stalk.
Okay, and it's silent.
It can be, yes. Another thing that I remember them by is that obviously they have spots. If that helps.
Okay. Are we talking like serval, maybe? Are we talking bigger or smaller?
Bigger.
Bigger.
Their paws, they have semi-retractable, not fully retractable. And that's when, with the paw prints, you can see that they look like dog paw prints, but they're not. They're actually that cat species.
Okay, you might have given the game away. I'm going to go with cheetahs.
Yeah, that's it.
Very good.
Yep,
well,
that's a cheetah.
Perfect segue into a shameless plug for Cheetahs Up Close, already streaming on Disney Plus. See what you did there.
And I've already watched it, and it's amazing.
Thanks very much. Yeah, they're amazing. Amazing animals.
Oh, definitely. And I have a soft toy one, and I've called him Mo. And yeah, I just try to make them up as the sweetest creatures they can possibly be, because I feel that when they look at you, they look so cute. It's unbelievable.
Totally, and yeah, totally the underdogs, undercats on the plains, because whilst we think of them as being this super fast predator, actually they are not the top of the food chain. So much of their hard work, so much of their time is not spent using their speed to catch up with their prey. It's using their speed to get away from their predators, lions, hyenas, bigger animals, leopards.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I'll go quickly move on to the next riddle, which may be a bit harder. This is the hard one. Dad sort of struggled with it, but we'll see. So it says, all around where flowers grow, I fly around finding food as I go. With a high-pitched buzz and fluffy fur, my alternative name can also be a flower. I'm threatened because my home is rare, and I'm active between April and September. What am I?
Okay, well, I'm guessing this is a species of bee.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of a species of bee with a name that is also a flower.
Yeah, it's not exactly well known for its name, but it can be. It's usually sort of known for its high-pitched buzz. That's how people identify it. It's definitely very fluffy.
Buff-tail bumblebee?
No, but it is. I think it is in the bumblebee family.
Okay.
It has a very small red tip to the tail, but. Are
we going to go red-tailed bumblebee?
Little less red on the tail than the red-tailed. I'm trying to think how else they would be remembered by. I guess they sort of look similar to the great yellow bumblebee, but not quite. I think they're a bit smaller.
Okay, Jamie, I think you're going to have to put me out of my misery.
Okay. Okay, the bee that I was talking about was the shrill carder bee, which can also be called the knapweed carder bee, and that's why it's alternative.
The knapweed carder bee. I mean, yeah, that was a tricky one, but I probably should have got that. Shame on me.
That's okay. That one, I do quite like my shrill carders, and they are very rare, so I thought it would be cool to try and chuck one into this podcast.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Well, Bertie, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for sparing a little bit of your time to be able to talk to me.
Of course. Always a pleasure to chat. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Bye. Wasn't that amazing? Getting to chat to Bertie Gregory was such an honour, and to be able to talk to him about all things bees, wildlife and cameras was just amazing. Keep your eyes peeled for the next podcast, and Secrets of the Bees will be out on Disney Plus on the 1st of April. And remember, stay glide. You'll never know what you'll find. See you next time.